Hello there, this is Agri Talk right here on KTN Farmers TV, and today we'll be talking about animals. It's all about animal and it's World Animal Day, and with me is Raphael Kinoti, Dr. Raphael Kinoti, who is from Brook, East Africa. He's here to let us know about this day and what this means to you as a farmer who has animals in their farm. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Calvin.
All right, so let's get right into it and just look at this World Animal Day.
Yeah.
What does it exactly mean?
Now, World Animal Day actually has a long history. It was celebrated first in March 1925 in Berlin, in Germany. But then is a day when the whole world wants to focus on the animals and raise the status of the animals. You could have animals around all of us, but then you don't notice that they are there. So it's actually a day to say, dunia isimame, we focus on animals. Let's have a look and think about the animals that actually are part of the world, part of nature, part of us. So really, that's the whole thing. Raising the status of animals, hence then beginning to think about their welfare. So that's the whole thing about World Animal Day.
And now, also still on looking at World Animal Day, and even looking at how we treat animals. First of all, in Kenya, when did the day start being celebrated, or how many years have we celebrated, and what are some of the achievements that we've made on such a day when we celebrate it?
I think the whole thing about World Animal Day, first of all, we've said historically 1925 is the year it was first celebrated in Germany.
Yes.
But then it wasn't until 1931 when the whole world began knowing about it. A conference in a town in Italy called Florence, where actually animal welfare persons came together and really spoke to the world candidly that we need to begin to focus on the World Animal Day. Now, in Kenya, it's not been celebrated actually for many years. I think the culture began barely 20 years ago. That's when lots of entities that are non-state actors began really talking about World Animal Day. And so then we began the culture of celebrating it. And so we may say we are still at the baby steps of it. We still have a long way to go. There are significant achievements because the message of animal welfare is beginning to be profiled. It's beginning to get to be known around Kenya. But then we are still not yet there. If you look at our countryside, if you look at our households, there's still a lot to be done. I think as we continue, we'll be talking about some of the things that we see actually that make you wonder whether we are still aware that there are animals living with us. But yes, the conversations are beginning there. You can now hear people talk about, or rather notice, an animal on the road that's not well catered for. You can hear casual talk, about really how we are not taking care of probably a donkey that somebody met and it has a wound. But by and large, we are still not yet there. So I think we need to up our game in terms of pushing in the culture and doing the celebration of the animals, which are very important to all of us.
Right. And now let's move on and look at when we are celebrating such days. We usually have a theme going around that usually pushes this day to be celebrated. So when we look at this year, what are we looking at in terms of the theme for the year?
Now, the theme for this year actually is interesting because then is one of the shortest themes we've ever had. A shared planet. Just that, a shared planet. Very short theme, but actually very loaded. Why? Because If you look at human beings today, you and I, all of us, we tend to think we are the only people living in this planet. So that everything is about the human being. Even any animal that is there, it should serve me. It should be for my benefit. It should be more for my exploitation. But then the theme this year, A Shared Planet, begins to say that actually they are animals, they have their own space, or rather we should give them their own space. Let me give you this small little background. Much of Kenyans know the creation story. God creating the world in 6 days. What was created in the sixth day? Actually, the sixth day, two things were created, if I may call them things. I normally say early in the morning, the animals were created. And in the afternoon, the human being was created. So really, after God creating rivers, lakes, everything else, what he put almost as the icing of the cake, the real icing is the human being. But can you imagine the human being is the only other thing that was created together with him the same day as the animals? That's how close we are to the animals. We are not animals, but we share a planet with them. And so the theme this year is meant just to push all of us to really think as I get to engage in anything small. And I think I'll be mentioning a few activities that we can do or that we do that actually negatively impact the animals. But as I sit in my house, as I drive on the road, as I clear a farm to plant my crops, I must think that actually in that farm, we are there with an animal. There's an animal that is sharing that as the only home. As I drive on the road, there's an animal that keeps crossing that road. And that is its natural habitat. It is its natural home, you know. As I even fly, you know, if I'm a pilot flying a plane, I must really know the atmosphere is I'm not there alone. I'm sharing it with birds that are migratory, that are moving lots of kilometers away. If I'm a fisherman going to the lake or the river or the ocean to do fishing, I must know that's our whole habitat. There are some other animals there that are actually living there by right. We are not favoring them. It is the only home they know. So the theme this year is actually meant to raise awareness for all of us that wherever we are in a shared planet. It's not just us. So as I drive on that road, really, I'll tell you, Kevin, the number of animals that die on our roads. And not just livestock, not just donkeys and cows and sheep. You've seen antelopes. You've seen even some very rare species if you go along Naivasha. Zebras, you see? And some of them actually now, like the government has done a lot of good work from Isiolo to Moyale. The road is just nice and good. 120 kilometers per hour, people are driving there. But the numbers of animals, some of them very rare, like the Grevy's zebra that is only found in our northern areas, they are being hit by these cars on a daily basis. And so the theme this year is to say, we are in a shared world. Please, as you drive, as you do everything, know we are sharing this planet. Animals have their own right, and so we need to do it carefully, knowing that it's our home. We are here by right as human beings, but animals are also here by right.
All right, and now the way you mentioned about some of the things that we need to do in order to take care of animals around us, even as we move on, you can just explain to us what are some of the things that we do on such a day to remind ourselves about the importance of animals. What are some of the things that we as individuals need to do?
Beautiful. Let me push it back kidogo before then I come to the question that you asked. Why actually animals? Why do we need animals? Do we even need animals in this world? You know, there's a way we behave like we don't need animals. If an antelope appears in a village, everybody comes out with spears and arrows. If a hippo strays into a pond in a village, oh, the whole village is mobilized and they come in and spear it into death. Even those animals actually that we don't eat, you know, we just come out like an animal like a pangolin. It's not many who eat that, but it appears the whole village is summoned. A pangolin doesn't even bite. It can't kill your livestock. But there's just a way that, I don't know whether it's a Kenyan spirit, that, you know, we are always fighting these animals, even for nothing. Do we need animals on earth? We do. We actually do. And that's why God put them there. That's why he created them and put them there. Our wildlife brings millions. And when we say wildlife, it's not just the animals that are in the parks. Animals that are in the parks spill over to where we are. And so we are always in the buffer zone. We are always offering them, you know, that space. But then you can imagine if they got finished, that will go with a lot. There are species that are here in this world that are our heritage. You don't find them anywhere around the world. And I can mention a few. I just mentioned the Grevy's zebra. You go down to the coast, you find a small little bird that is called Clark's weaver bird, or even the Sokoke pipit. You never find those ones anywhere around the world. They are just our animals here in Kenya, nowhere else in the world. That pride, that this is our heritage. So we need animals in many ways. And of course, livestock. That I don't need to explain because then they earn as income all the time. And so, coming now back to your question, there are many activities that one can do to celebrate the World Animal Day. Organizations can do celebrations in public. Like, I know a number of our partners are working out there, and for the World Animal Day, we have functions that are bringing communities together. For example, bringing a livestock camp where we treat them and offer people free advice, free treatment, free advice on how, for example, you can cater for your cattle, sheep, how you can cater for your donkeys, how you can treat them nicely and well. So there is that part where you can participate in some of these functions. But also there is another part where you can do small little things, even at an individual level. 4th of October, the whole world wants to focus on the animal. You may want to say, this day, I'll do one small little activity. I'll give an example. Most of the donkeys that are used in the countryside in Kenya, you look at them, it has a wood somewhere because of the hard work that they do. If you went to an agrovet and purchased ukisema dawa ya kidonda, they will know an aerosol sprayer. 200, 300 shillings, you purchase that. You go to the nearby kisima, well, you know, a borehole where donkeys come and get water, and talk to the owners and say, you know, let's talk about treating woods. If anybody can do that, not just a vet, anybody. With this aerosol, you have some kipande soap. Can you stop your donkey a little bit? Let's wash it with soap. and do this aerosol sprayer. That will go a long way in helping this owner of this donkey to know, hey, this is something I can purchase, this is something I can do. And so you can have some very down-to-earth initiatives, even by an individual. Sometimes what I do in the estate where I live, I get young boys. I have a son who I tell just move around the houses and get young boys. And we move around the compound, all around, picking rubbish. But as we pick rubbish, we come across insects, grasshoppers. We talk about them. But as we talk about grasshoppers, we'll see a donkey passing, we'll see a cow passing, and we'll talk about it. And so all these stories together, you can imagine 1 hour, even 30 minutes of walking around with 10 boys around the estate or even the streets of the estate and talking about this and collecting the rubbish. And as you talk about animals, the next day as they go to school, they'll begin to see a donkey that they were not seeing. They'll begin to see, this other animal. They'll begin to see a bird that they actually sometimes what I do, I even pick binoculars. If you don't have binoculars, you can just walk. With naked eyes, you can see a lot of birds. And for some of us who grew up in the rural areas, we know a name or 2 or 3, 4, 10 birds. Bring them to attention to that. Listen to the singing of the music of them. You will be forming almost a club of young people who get to understand the nature that is around them, the animals that are around them, and they can get to participate in lots of these things. And so sometimes actually even in places where in highways, animals are really hit by moving vehicles. Why don't you go to that matatu stage and say, Buana, drivers, let's talk about this dinky dog. We are hitting a lot of these antelopes on this road. What do you think you can do? Generate a debate there. In 10, 15 minutes, it will be a debate that will open somebody's eye on, I don't need to treat these animals this way. As I drive my matatu, as I drive my personal car, I need to be a little bit more careful. I have concentrated on small little initiatives because then most of the times we think, ni serikali. It is the government that needs to do this. It is that NGO that needs to do that. I wanted really to shift from that so that then it is we, ourselves, small initiatives that you can do without needing anybody's money, and you can actually get to celebrate some of these animals that are so critical, so wonderful, so great, that are our heritage. And you may choose to go to wildlife. You may choose to go to animals that are kept at home. There are so many things. Sometimes it's just organizing people and you getting some water for some animals that are in some of the very dry areas. I've seen animals in very, very dry areas where it's difficult for them to get water. And you just charter some water and offer it free for livestock, and they will be very happy. Even in Nairobi, actually, what many people don't know, we have a lot of donkeys around Nairobi. People who are using donkeys. You may want to visit some of those places and just offer some service.
And Daktari, you as Brook East Africa,
Yes.
In the different initiatives that you get into of taking care of animals, what have you come to discover that is the problem that is now bringing us to such very serious incidents? Because as you've rightly put it, when I was young, let me just say, when I was young, when you used to see a dog, you just want to
beat it.
You just want to chase it away. So what is leading to this very harsh treatment towards various and different animals in the various things that you do as Brook East Africa that you found out?
Several things, and that's why actually World Animal Day is very, very critical. There are beliefs around animals. Brook, one of our animals that we work with is the donkey, but then we work with horses also and mules. there are various beliefs around an animal like that. That one, it can never get sick. When it gets sick, it can only die. You can't treat it. Actually, we were talking with some other young boys who are using them, and they were saying, you know, these animals will rarely feel pain. It's like it's a log, you see? There are all these beliefs around all this, but also even in our local cultures, there are beliefs also around some different animals. You go to a culture that demonizes the owl. You know, they think that is an evil bird. Why did God create it if it was evil? So there are things around that, and so the relationship between ourselves and animals is always wrong. And as parents, as we bring up kids, we're telling them, utaumwa na huyu mnyama. Some parents will even say, utaumwa na ng'ombe. You know, cows would never bite. But as they want a kid to toe the line, they'll say, eat this food, or do 1, 2, 3, or I'll call the cow to bite you. I mean, so you're really putting into that child, cows bite, dogs bite, animals attack. You know, they will carry you to the forest and they will disappear with you there and all this. So we grow in this sort of a culture where we are really trained or socialized towards believing animals are not our friends. You know, and they are there to just serve us. After it serves us, we kick it. You know, whichever animal it is. So you're finding a very, very nasty culture, you know, of treating, even those animals are actually very close to us. Like dogs are very close to us, you know. But yet the treatment is not really that nice. Even we've gone to some areas where a community depends like fully, completely on a donkey. A young man who has 2 donkeys that they are using every day to fill water, and every day they are earning 3,000, 5,000 shillings every day. Yet the donkey is full of woods. Now you wonder, this animal is bringing you this amount of money, yet really wood treatment, wood care, washing that wood and doing this aerosol sprayer will take you less than 500 shillings. This animal was brought in 3,000, 2,000 shillings a day. Why don't you really want to take? Because the person believes that this animal doesn't feel pain. Actually, even tomorrow with the woods, it will still work. And actually, some of them really do that. I mean, you find a donkey with woods all over, it's carrying water, it's moving, so it tends to think, by the way, you know, it's not like a human being. If I have a wood somewhere, I mean, I'll be down in hospital, back at home, not working. But then animals really are hardworking. They really don't show pain the way we show it. They won't cry the way we cry. But we always want to say animals are sentient beings. What do we mean by sentient beings? They feel pain. They get sad, just like all of us. And so that belief that actually these ones can work whichever way, they'll still move on. And that's why you find when a neighbor, I mean, your animals trained to my farm, I just come out and slash them. We have those cases, actually, our vets treating and, you know, suturing animals that have been cut by a neighbor. Now you wonder, this animal actually, it didn't know it is eating your crops. It's just looking for feed. It's just looking for feed. So the problem is between you and the owner of the animal, yet you've picked that and you've transferred it to the animal. There's something that is missing there. You reduced your thinking to the animal, because the animal really is not as wise as I am. You know? But then I'm beginning to fight with it, like it can think like I am thinking. No, it can't think like the way I'm thinking, because then my IQ level is higher, my thinking system is higher. You know, I'm a more advanced, you know, being. But then when I'm attacking it, I want to think it can think the way I'm thinking. You know, when an animal is on the road and I'm hooting and driving fast, I want to think it knows even what hooting is. It doesn't even know what hooting is. You know, it didn't go to school and it wasn't taken through a driving code like the way some of us were taken through. Actually, some of us were taken through na hizo science tukiona hata, you know, we don't even recognize them. How about an animal that can't think the way I'm thinking? It doesn't even know what hooting is all about. It may think it's some music somewhere that's playing. So the level of the thinking of the animal is actually different from my level. I must know that. And that's why when I know that, then I know how to treat it. If I know I'm at this level, the animal is at this level, then you really have to really reduce yourself to where it is and begin to think the way it imagines things. That's where Kenyans are not. We are always thinking about ourselves. We are always thinking, this animal, this cow should think the way I'm thinking. This bird that's coming to attack my maize should know I also need to eat. It doesn't know. It's looking for food.
So, Daktari, we have to go for a short break.
Yes, yes,
but
yes, yes.
when we come back, I'll just want to us to pick it from there so that we may
Yes.
understand what we need to do in order to make sure that at least we understand what the animal needs at different times.
Beautiful.
All right, there you have it. That is Dr. Raphael Kinoti from Brook, East Africa, and he's just been explaining to us passionately about what you need to do on this day in order for you to honor your animal as it brings in that money that you expect. All right, we are going for a short break. We'll be right back with more. All right, welcome back. This is Agri Talk, and today is World Animal Day. And I have Dr. Raphael Kinoti here from Brook, East Africa. And we have been extensively speaking about how you can take care of your animal. And we were talking about the challenges as we went for a break. Now, when we come back, all right, now let's continue and look at the challenges that animals are facing today. What are some of the challenges?
Kevin, animals are facing a myriad of challenges. Some of them, I'll say, are man-made. Some others are natural in nature. One, overexploitation. What do I mean by overexploitation? We kill a lot of animals for our own needs. Think about poaching. For those of us who've been moving from Nairobi to Nakuru for a good number of years, 10, 15 years ago, there used to be huge herds of zebras in Naivasha-Nakuru stretch. Today, in an area like Karai in Naivasha, for those of us who've used that main highway, that used to be an area where zebras were always. But today, it's all built up area. Where did the zebras go? We actually don't know. But we all know that we've eaten them. We've actually eaten them. You know? How about those many herds of Thompson's gazelle, the Grant gazelles, and all sorts of gazelles that we used to find along that stretch? There is huge poaching, and not just in urban areas, even into rural areas. Kenyans do poach. And some of the species that we are poaching are species that are fast coming to an end, that the generations to come tomorrow, they'll not find them. So a big problem of overexploitation, not just here, but even around the world, we have that. But then we have the second problem, of habitat loss. What do I mean by habitat loss? Where animals used to stay and roam, today we've used it to do something else. In the world, they will tell you the biggest driver for habitat loss is agriculture. And I'm happy that in this forum we talk a lot about agriculture. When we are going to do our farming, for example, in the whole of rural Kenya, how do we do farming? It's dry season, it's plowing season, we set the whole place on fire. So the whole farm, actually, moto inaenda mpaka kwa jirani, as in, yeah. Why did you have actually to burn? There are so many other better places, ways of really clearing the land. But then have you thought about how that burning has burnt a million other wildlife that actually would be very beneficial? And when I talk about a million other wildlife, it's millions also of other wildlife that are beneficial even to our crops. The butterflies, the bees, lots of other pollinators, wasps, that were very good for our crops. You've burnt all of that. So habitat loss is a big challenge that we are facing all around the world, and animals have that pressure on them. You know, we are opening new lands, and some of the lands that we are opening for farming, we actually should not be opening them. You know, you may be farming on 5 acres of land, but actually if you did some nice, good, intensive farming on 1 acre, you produce as much as you're producing in 5 acres of land. So the rest of the land should be left for your wildlife in your small little 5 acres of land, which would be amazing. We have this big animal called climate change. Of course, you know the biggest driver for climate change is human beings. We are releasing a lot of greenhouse gases, carbon, methane, lots of these gases that are actually going and forming the greenhouse that makes the world get warmer and warmer. And so we can see all these challenges that we've been having around the world. Europe this year has had a drought that they said they first saw 500 years ago. That's Europe. Wildfires in France, in Germany, all these places, you can't imagine. Those places without are cool and all this. Recurrent droughts. Today in Kenya, we are talking about all these droughts. In those droughts, animals are dying in droves. Not just the cattle and sheep and goats and donkeys, but even wildlife. They are dying in masses. We may be eliminating a species because of the climate change. How do we do to really do adaptation and mitigation into all these things? So these are some of the challenges. I'll talk about diseases. And some of the diseases actually could be going into pandemics. We're just coming out of COVID, which actually experts will tell us is a disease that came from animals to ourselves, and I'll confirm that because the coronavirus, I studied it in school, in the university 20 years ago. So it's a disease of animals. SARS it's in that family of the SARS. And so diseases are also a big problem, but then diseases are also getting fueled by climate change. But then I also mentioned something which I must mention actually. We are also fueling them. And here I want to talk particularly to the dairy cattle farmers. I love the dairy industry. I'm a veterinarian. But dairy farmers are fueling diseases. I go almost in every farm. A cow has mastitis, and they are pushing in an antibiotic there, which is okay. That's the way to treat it. But the vet will tell you that antibiotic, you need to push it in there for 3 to 5 days. Some farmers will do it for 1 day, and they will go. You're making that organism to know the dawa, and so tomorrow it will be resistant. But while still you milk and sell that milk, when you know it has that drug. I drink the milk. The drugs that are used in animals, almost all of them are used in human beings. So you're making those organisms in my body get to recognize that. When I come down with a disease, I go to hospital, I get that antibiotic, it won't help me. They have developed resistance. And so we have this big looming challenge called antimicrobial resistance, which actually may sweep out all our drugs in our market, and we may be having these mega diseases that may not be curable in the coming days until we are able really to know how we manage this. It's a challenge to the animals, it's a challenge to us actually. That is cutting across all of us. And so there is all these major challenges actually, but then also the normal challenges of welfare, which I don't want to go back to. I have mentioned all those ones. So it's a combination of all these. If you look at all the things that I've said, Kevin, they are targeting the animals, but there is a way they are bouncing back to us, the human beings, because as Professor Wangari Maathai would say, you destroy the environment, you destroy yourself. There's a way it bounces back to you. There's a way it comes back to you, and it can really injure you. And so we can keep talking about some of these challenges, and we can talk about them. We have not talked about pollution, which is a big challenge. Lots of effluents being released into our rivers and lakes. Those rivers, Nairobi River, have you known, when it goes down towards the Indian Ocean, it will join the Tana River, it will join the Athi River, and then eventually people are taking water from Nairobi River. This Nairobi River that is stinking here. Down the road, people are taking water, which they don't know actually is mixed with some heavy metals from our industries here. But then also animals are taking that, you see? And so it's a whole combination of all these that we really have to think about and ask ourselves, how do we want to have a sustainable world going forward?
All right, and also let me just take you back to when you were explaining about the challenges and speaking about the species that are reducing.
Yeah.
And now let us look at the donkey, because there was a report that was released by Caldro a couple of I
In
think in
2019.
2019,
Yeah.
talking about the species of donkey are reducing.
Yeah.
So where we are at the moment, with the challenges that you've explained to us,
Yeah.
what are we looking at when you look at the donkey species? Are we still looking at it going down, or what are the numbers? Are they still maybe at a sustainable place where we can say now the numbers are not reducing?
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for bringing this particular issue of the donkey, actually, because, as I said, we are huge advocates of the donkey. And why are we huge advocates of the donkey? 70%, 70 to 80% of Kenya is arid, semi-arid. If you walk in those counties, virtually over 35 counties in Kenya, people heavily depend on the donkey. Think about all the counties that you see on the TV being said are arid, semi-arid, and these are the counties that have a red alert. You know, the other day they announced from Turkana to Wajir to go to households in those places.
Yes.
You found every household has a donkey or 2 or 10. They don't keep them for prestige. They keep them because those animals are the ones, when push comes to shove, they help them. They are the animals that actually they depend on them. Some of those households will never drink water if a donkey doesn't go to the river, because the woman of the house has a young baby, she is breastfeeding, she doesn't have enough strength, she hasn't had food for a couple of days. You can imagine if she would carry a 20-liter jerrycan of water on her back. She can't.
For almost 10 kilometers.
For almost 10 kilometers. She won't. So she is solely depending on this donkey. She walks alongside the donkey, or maybe the young boy comes from school and the woman says, pick the donkey and go 10 kilometers away, get water. The donkey will generously carry 4 jerry cans, bring home. This is the importance of these animals. So we don't keep chatting about the animal, because some people think, these are animal rights guys. They'll keep always babbling about the donkey and wanting to make it a flashy animal. No. Let's go down where rubber meets the road. You'll find this animal is so important. In the year 2009, the census that was carried out in Kenya said we had 1.8 million donkeys. In 2015-2016, Kenya introduced slaughtering. Communities came up in arms. We, as non-state actors, we came up and said, this business is not sustainable. We don't have donkey farms. This business is going to eat into the donkeys that are used by people for their livelihoods. And so it's not a sustainable business. You can't introduce a business that exploits and you don't introduce a mechanism for production. You must look at the whole value chain. Now, everybody said, no, you people are making this into a big fuss. The census in 2019 said we only had 1.1 million donkeys. From 1.8 to 1.1. And so we would say for 10 years, we had lost like half of our donkey population. Half because, donkeys were reproducing and all this from 1.8 to 1.1, 700,000. You add the ones that have given birth and things like that, we should have been above 2 million. So we lost, we lost half of our donkey population. And this you can directly attribute to the slaughter. Because Carlo report said slaughterhouses were slaughtering even pregnant animals.
Wow.
Oh, yes. And so it's an industry that wasn't showing any sign of sustainability. It's an industry that was extractive, not an industry that was helping the donkey sector. And so we are really happy, because then in 2020, the government put a stop on the slaughter because then of the community outcry. It's not the first government in Africa to do that. We have 17 countries in Africa that have tried to slaughter donkeys. It didn't work out. They closed. And so even our neighbors here in Tanzania, by last year, October, they had to close their 2 slaughterhouses because communities began to be in big stress. Communities began coming up in arms. And so we are beginning to see the population begin to catch up again. But I'll tell you what, I don't think it will take us 10 years to go back to where we were. It may take us more. And so we are right at the baby steps. We are really happy that that exploitative business is not there, because it's not really a business that's sustainable. We are beginning to regain. Communities have a big challenge today in buying a donkey, because then the prices have gone very high. Communities who are looking for them, they are not even getting them to buy. But if we left it like this and the government injected funds, especially the county government, because then they have the schedule for, that really mandates them to do all these things in agriculture. We are ready to join hands with them. We can help communities do some nice, good breeding, so that then we're able to regain the numbers again. And our communities get helped in terms of taking this sector forward.
And now, also looking at the incoming government, you mentioned about the government injecting funds and also the county government. Now we have a new incoming government, and their main focus is on agriculture, as the President, William Ruto, said during his speech. And what are we looking at in terms of moving forward, what are you seeing happening to the sector, and especially looking at it from now a perspective of the livestock perspective and also animal, even at large? What are we looking at in terms of now going forward?
I'll say I must most sincerely congratulate His Excellency President Ruto. His very initial speeches have centered on climate change. They have also centered on agriculture. I think even when he was campaigning, his mantra was pro-people. Or should I call it pro-hustler?
Yes.
There is no single hustler who is more hustler than the owner of a donkey. The owner of a donkey is a real hustler. I think all of them should have that T-shirt written in front and back, the original hustler. These boys who are working with these donkeys, they are the real hustlers. They're the real people who are trying to eke out a living. That woman in Wajir, in Baringo, in Turkana, who has that donkey that has that jellycan on its back, walking for those kilometers, that woman should have that big T-shirt written, the original hustler. And so I think the policies that this government has begun spelling out are giving me a lot of hope. That actually these sectors, this sector like the donkey sector, that animal in particular that has been orphaned by government planning for many years, I'm hoping that that sector will get some budgets injected into it. The other day, I was in one of the county areas, actually in Homa Bay. We were celebrating World Rabies Day. And we were talking with local people. And they were saying, you know what? In this area of ours, we can't afford a tractor to do the plowing. But you know what? All of them can afford a donkey to do the plowing. The county there had tractors that did the plowing. But in 1-2 short years, they could not be maintained, the tractors. And so the tractors are out of the way. They found the donkey. They have left the donkey with the communities doing the plowing. This is a critical sector that can get people out of poverty. We need to develop this animal. We need to inject money to this animal. It's the only animal that is widespread all in our rural areas for draft power that is very, very critical to help our people turn things around. And so what I would passionately ask the president and the incoming minister for agriculture, let's focus on small sectors like this. Let's focus on how to empower sectors like this. Let's get into breeding this animal. Let's get into developing this animal. Let's get into organizing this sector nicely. And it will drive the transformation of our in semi-arid areas. Europe came to where it is because of the horse. If you go to the agrarian revolution, which actual animal was running the show in Europe? It was the horse. We can transform Africa through the donkey horse. We are at that stage. Let's empower the people. Let's empower the animal. Let's take care of it. Let it get our people to the next level. And we feel then when we get to that next level, we don't need these animals. We can begin to reduce their numbers. But for now and for the coming few decades, we need to develop that animal in the sector. And so what I'm hoping is that the government can focus on that as they focus on other animals.
All right, and also let's also move on and look at what would be your message to policymakers on inclusion of animal welfare in the coming COP27. You know, it's happening in November. Yeah. So what would be your message to policymakers?
First of all, I'm actually very happy that the whole topic of animal welfare for the first time has gotten into COP. There's a way the former COPs didn't think actually that animal welfare was an issue. But really you can never shut off animal welfare in an age where we have pandemics that are all being traced to animals. And so COP27, we have a lot of hopes on it. Let's up our voice on animal welfare as we inject energy into all these other sectors of ecology and climate change. Animal welfare is a critical component which, if we leave out, it will always be pulling us back. We'll always be flashing some of these pandemics and we get ourselves back. COVID closed us in houses for almost 3 years, you know? So animal welfare has become so critical, so important, that we will think we need resources there. We need that voice to be amplified. We need the whole world population actually to get to be aware of animal welfare, and it's important to our own survival. And so I would think let that be a critical message, a big message, big policies about animal welfare actually in any country, because most of the countries actually don't have even animal welfare policies. I think let's begin by saying the whole of Africa, now that COP is in Africa, let every country out of the 54 countries that we have in Africa have at least an animal welfare policy that guides the country in terms of development of the welfare of its animals in the coming years.
All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. And now, as we come to a close, from where you sit on this World Animal Day, what would be your message to Kenyans? What would be your message to farmers out there, and even the young people? What would be your message with regards to taking care of your animal?
I will revisit the whole theme of this year's World Animal Day, a shared planet. I'll tell Kenyans and everybody else who is watching this, we have a shared planet. Please, in everything that you do, just know we have a shared planet. We are not living here alone. Animals are living with us, from our homes to the neighborhood, to that bush that's next to your village, to that forest that's next to your village. Animals are living there. And so anything that you do from your farm to the road to everywhere could have a negative impact on these animals. What can you do to ensure these animals live better? Beginning with the cow that you're keeping at your house, and the dog and the donkey. What can you do? Can you reformat and rethink again about these animals? How have I been treating this cow? How have I been treating these chickens that I keep? How have I been treating this donkey that I use every day? It gives me money. How have I? How have I even been treating birds that come into my farm or into my house? And so I think it's a call that we rethink the way we've been treating animals. There is always something that you can do that does better for an animal.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today. We appreciate you so much. All right, that's it. So you've heard from Raphael Kinoti himself from Brook, East Africa, telling us about animal welfare and what we need to do. And I hope you've learned something today. Hey, treat your animal today. Let it rest, wash it, and just take just a little bit of your time to make sure that your animal feels appreciated today. My name is Kelvin Nyakundi. This is AgriTalk right here on KTN Farmers TV. Let's meet next time. Same place, same time.